up there. And then they seen that the demand, the population outgrew the school. So then is when the WPA built the Haldeman High School now, the new one, because when the population got bigger and bigger and bigger, then they needed more schools. So that's what they did. But in the meantime, the brick school was deteriorating so bad. When I went to school there in the early 40s, the floor in the gym was already rotten out. It had holes in it. It was just about unsafe. And what they would do, they would block off sections of it where you couldn't go in there. But they still held functions up there. They had different things that they'd bring in, petting zoos and snakes and reptile shows and things for kids to, you know.
But it was not being used as a school at that time.
It was being used as a school, yes.
Still.
The bottom level was being used as a school. And when they got the other school built is when they started shifting around. Then they brought everybody up to the Haldeman School that was down there. And they started out that they were going to have the full 12 years at that school. But population says, no, we ain't going to have room for all these people. So then the last 2 years, it went up from the 1st to the 10th grade. And then the last 2 years, Moorhead had a school built for the Moorhead people, and they let us come in there for the last 2 years of the school. So
and you were bused?
I finished up my school in Moorhead. Last 2 years was at Moorhead. I went 10 years at Haldeman and 2 years at Moorhead, the last 2 years. And they would bus the people from Haldeman, which was very few people, at the senior class, you know, and into Moorhead.
And what year did you graduate then?
57.
57. And that would have been after the Brickyard shut down.
Brickyard had shut down.
How old were you when the Brickyard shut down? Do you remember?
No, I was in, I think by the time Dad was laid off from there, I think I was in high school, maybe 9th, 10th grade, somewhere in that area.
So it was about mid-50s, early to mid-50s
Yeah.
when it shut down.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Did people start moving out? What did people do?
No, you know, it was a sad thing when it shut down because there was so many people unemployed and no jobs left in the area whatsoever except sawmills. And then they had to go to farming and logging and different means of income. My dad, he went to Maysville at the other brickyard after so many years being laid off. He went to Maysville and he worked there for a few years, and then he come back and he started school bus driving for the Roane County schools. He drove a school bus. After he would drive the bus in the morning, they would stop in Moorhead, and at that time it was the Mills Theater here in town. They cleaned that up every day. So after the last showing at night, he'd come in the morning after he made his first trip with the kids, and they would clean, him and my mother would clean that up. So different sources of income, it kept everything together.
And you said he actually was responsible for moving the kilns up to Maysville.
Yeah, he was. He removed the kilns. When he got to work at Maysville, he was telling them about the kilns at Haldeman and the years that he put in there, and that the kilns were still standing. There was 7 or 8 kilns or more up through there that were in perfect shape. So Maysville wanted to know who they get in touch with to buy those kilns. So I guess he told them General Refractories owned them, and they went through the procedure. But anyway, they hired him instead of coming there to work that week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it takes, to tear the kilns down here, which was a good deal for him. He didn't have to drive, so he saved money by not driving, but he was getting the same pay by working here. So they tore all of the keels down, and then they trucked them from Haldeman up to Maysville to those keels up there. But interesting part is when I was working making railroad cars in East Chicago, Indiana, one of their keels that they stress relieve these tank cars after they're welded, they put them in, they heat them up to a certain temperature, and that takes all the stress off of the wheels and everything. Well, they had to tear the keels down to repair them one day, and I happened to be down there, and every one of them bricks at Haldeman, Kentucky. Years and years and years they've been in there. I thought that was amazing. I said, of all the places in this world, probably to buy fire brick, those had to be Haldeman. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting to see that.
Did a lot of the workers go to Maysville, go to other, did the other brickyards like in Olive Hill and whatnot stay open longer?
Some of the people was lucky enough to get a job at Olive Hill. Olive Hill Brickyard was still in operation maybe for, I'd say, 2 years or so after they shut down at Haldeman. Some of the people, of course, they couldn't use many. They already had their own crew, but they took what they could use. And my dad wasn't one of them. They picked and chose who they wanted. And my dad had a lot to do with the union here. He didn't have a lot of friends over there. That some of the office workers or people, you know how that goes. But anyway, he didn't get chosen to go over there, so he went to Maysville and worked there. And then they had different programs for these people. Agriculture tried to help out by having classes and schooling on raising different crops for the market that they weren't used to raising, like strawberries. We had acres of strawberries. Then they had classes on raising cucumber, pickles for the factory. They had the tobacco barn. They had a setup in there. They bought them there. That's where they would deliver them to. They would grade them, and then they would send them to wherever the market was. So,
was this the government that was running these programs to
no,
help?
this was the extension office, the agriculture department here. I think it was right out Moorhead County, Round County, and they were just trying to get programs going for these people that were laid off. There were so many of them that had families.
Did some people move away?
Yeah, most of them did, and most of them retired. My dad retired at 62. He drew one check, and he passed away, and then my mom had to send that check back. So he got nothing out of Social Security, and he worked since he was a kid, so he got nothing. But now my mother, on the other hand, she lived to be 80 some years old, 83 years old, so she drew his pension too at the time.
So did he have just Social Security, or did he get anything from the brickyards?
When they left here, when General Refractory shut it down, they had a credit union like most other places, but whoever run the credit union took the money and ran too. So the people that had money in there lost that. And as far as the retirement, there was no retirement fund available for nobody. Everything that had been paid in, if they had paid into a fund, I don't know that they did, but there was no retirement pensions.
And did they shut down everything like the athletic association?
Everything left, and the money went with it.
And so the clinic, the only thing that was left was the school.
The only thing left was the school. The clinics all shut down. Everything that had anything to do with the brickyard shut down. The post office was the last to go, and of course that was governed by the government then. They just closed down so many rural post offices that they didn't need.
And how do you remember when that was about?
No, I don't remember the exact time, but it's been a number of years. But that was a good thing on our part because they started, when they shut that our post office down there in Haldeman, then they started to the mailboxes at the house, in front of the house, so they brought the mail to us instead of us going to the post office.
And then the new school shut down. What year was that?
They shut down in December 1993.
1993?
So for quite a few years, the school was still there.
Yeah, the school was there when we moved back from Northwest Indiana. When I retired up there, I had to go out on a disability. They wouldn't let me work because of medication and certain things, so I just took a retirement and I left up there. And we moved back here. I had a brother living here, and it was a different situation. The school was still standing, but they used it for flea markets. They used it for people that moved in it, actually living in that thing, homesteading it. The county still owned it, so nobody was paying rent, and everybody was just going and coming as they wanted, and everybody in the country, I guess, had a key to it. I don't know how you describe that mess, but later on, a couple of kids went inside and they started stealing all the copper and electric wiring, and I guess the county decided they were going to sell this school and get it off their hands, so they sold it, I believe, for $30,000, the school, the property, and everything, and it was still intact at that time, to Marty Stevens. He bought it, and Marty kept it for a number of years, and he didn't do anything to it but let it run down, and then it went on. He sold it or traded it for some old cars to a lady in Farmers or Salt Lick, and she couldn't do nothing with it because of the asbestos problem. The state had sent her a letter telling her it had to be cleaned up by a certain time or she's going to get fined $50,000 a day until it was cleaned up. And she got a hold of Lloyd Dean, and without knowing of the asbestos problem, she talked Lloyd Dean into seeing if the community would still want to buy it. So Lloyd called a meeting at the bar station, and there was about 15 of us there, and we decided, yeah, this might be a good venture to get into because it's pretty decent. It had burnt at this time. The school part had burnt, so we had the gym left, and she decided she'd let us have it for $30,000, which before we had tried to buy it when it was still intact. She wanted $100,000, which we couldn't afford. So now this time it was down to $30,000, but she didn't tell us the asbestos problem, that she had a number of days to get that cleaned up. So we went ahead and decided to purchase the thing from them, and it was handled through the realtor here in Morehead, what's his name, Roger Lewis, through their office, and nobody knew nothing about no asbestos problem until the day we met at the bank, and the loans had been made out, the paperwork was all done, so they wrote her the check and she wrote us this notice. We got looking at this thing, and it says she had so many days to get it cleaned up, the asbestos problem. So now where do we go? So the guy that had signed the notices, we decided to get in touch with them. They were at Ashland, and see how long we've got to get it cleaned up, since we're new owners of this thing. So that's what we did, and they give us an extension. You've got to have it cleaned up in a number of months or days or whatever. And then we got the ball rolling, how are we going to do this? And there were no asbestos to be seen. It had burned, but they said the asbestos was there before it burned, so it's there somewhere after it burned. So we got talking to one of our board members, and he said, I know a guy that might help you. So we got in touch with Harry Clark, our magistrate. And Harry come to our meeting, and he said, I know a lady that owes me a favor, and let me give her a call. And he called this lady, and I guess she was a good friend of his, and she worked for a construction company called Gray Wolf Construction, and that's what they did, was cleaned up asbestos. So they gave us a guideline what we need to do. You had to have a landfill to dump it. You had to have covered trucks to haul this out. It had to be loaded onto trucks and covered and hauled out to the landfill, and you had to pay X number of big dollars to use this landfill to dump this toxic waste, you know. So this created all kinds of problems. But anyway, we did that, and Harry talked to the lady, and she said, yes, this is what we got to do. You got to get permission to use a landfill. So we went to Judge Nichols, and Judge Nichols has been great to us. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll help you all I can. He said, you can use the county's landfill. They got a certain amount of toxic waste area. He said, you can dump it there for free. And he said, the county will furnish you the loaders and the trucks. But everyone that's going to be there to work and to help these people has to be schooled through a program that they can work with toxic waste. So about 15 of us had a class. This Gray Wolf Construction knew the people and got us in touch with the instructors, so they come out and they taught us how to deal with this stuff. So that's what we had to do. And once we got it cleaned out, the county came, they loaded it, they hauled it away, and we got it cleaned out, and then all the testing had to be done. And we had to pay for that. It was $1,000 for each testing. They would come in and take samples off of the floor, air quality, all kinds of different samples, send them off and get them tested, and then they come back with results like, no, we found X number of particles in the gym. We got to have a second testing done, so you have to re-scrub it, re-clean it, go through all this again, haul the water off to the toxic landfill, and dump the water that you scrubbed the floor with, clean all that out, and then we finally got a clean bill of slate. So the air quality tested it, and everything was okay. They took the floor samples, it's fine. So we had a clean bill of slate, but it cost us several $1,000s that we didn't have. So it worked out okay, and now we've got a school that we can, or a gym that we can use for about any occasion.
We've got just a few more minutes, and can you tell me how it is that the school came to burn, and then maybe add anything else that you'd like to as closing, kind of?
Well, I'm going to tell you the story that I've heard, and I'm sure it's true. Two kids broke into the school. I'm not going to mention names, but they broke into the gym part. They started taking the heater cores out of all of the steam heat. They had steam heat in the original part of the school in there, but they had copper radiators inside of those heaters in the gym. So they were in there stealing the copper out of those heaters, and the people from the real estate and the lady that owned it happened to come up there one evening. They were in the process of trying to sell it, so they happened to come up there for some reason or another, and these people were in there. So they ran them out, got them out of there and told them that not to come back. And whatever, they slapped their hand and sent them on their way, but they didn't call the police or nothing. They just told them to go. Well, that night they came back and set it on fire and burned it down. And these same two people that did this was in the paper a week later, or 2 weeks. One of them had died with an overdose in a motel here in Moorhead. The other one that had give this guy the drugs to be OD'd, his father came from Tennessee up here and killed him. So now this kid's father's in jail doing time, but the two that broke into the gym are now dead.
It's quite a story.
That's the story that I got, and I'm sure it's true.
Anything that you'd like to add that I haven't asked, or about the community, or?
I don't know. It's just amazing that the town of Haldeman could be the richest community in this area anywhere, including Moorhead, and then 30, 40 years later, they're the poorest community, and Moorhead is the thriving community. It's just in reverse. It's just amazing to me, and I don't know.
How that happened.
It's just amazing to see anything go. I've heard from rags to riches, but this is in reverse. But I'm thankful I got to grow up during both parts of it. We had good people, good teachers. Most of my friends were all grew up and went off and made a life for themselves and turned out to be respectable people. Some of my friends were turned out to be lawyers and doctors, and some of them were air control, worked at the air controllers in Dayton. Myself, I did a lot of tank car work, building tank cars. I made all of their prototype cars to send to different places to enter into the World's Fair. I was part of that, to put their tank cars on display in New York when they had the World Fair there. All of the ones that I know of turned out to be real nice people, and some of them, of course, stayed by, and they're bricklayers and block layers and carpenters and farmers and what have you. But I don't know of any of the people in my class that I graduated from that were not respectable people.